in life. It's because you've adopted a responsibility voluntarily. This makes you special. I really mean this. I want you to think about this. The reason it makes you special is this thing called the Pareto Distribution. You all know it. It's the 80-20 rule. Right? 80% of the stuff that gets done in life is done by 20% of the people. Right? It applies to everything. Pareto, the mathematician that discovered it, it applies to trees. Right? 80% of sunlight is soaked up by 20% of the trees. All the other trees are in the shadows. Don't be in the shadows. It applies to music. A guy like me, I would say Coldplay, but there are thousands and thousands of artists out there, but we only know a few, like Coldplay. It applies to classical music. There were hundreds of classical music composers, but we know Chopin, Beethoven, Mozart, Tchaikovsky. And from them, we only know Beethoven's Ninth and Fifth. So again, the Pareto distribution applies to everything, and it's the reason you are in this seat today. You have adopted a responsibility to learn, to keep the world safe online, and I thank you for that. Really, sincerely. So, with that, let's learn some more today. We're going to go through a journey of classic Greek literature. Why not? And there is a reason for it, because the Greeks gave us so much. The Greeks gave us democracy. Well, they had a good try. They didn't quite survive on their democracy. We're doing a lot better today in this millennium. But they gave us democracy. They gave us arch bridges, geography, navigation. They gave us the theater. They also gave us cyber. It's true. So in ancient Greece, the word kubanao meant, a little slow, excuse me, let me go back. The receiver is slow. The word kubanao meant to control a technology. There it is. Kubernetes were steersmen of the technology. Now, the technology at the time in Greece was a ship. Now, you can imagine 2,500 years ago, a ship sailing across the ocean. This would have been a great and terrifying technology and certainly experience. So to command a great technology and Kubernetes, people who controlled that technology. In the 1940s, this term actually made a comeback. Thank you, Alan Turing, one of the great unsung heroes of World War II, without whom I would be speaking German today. So thank you, Mr. Turing, who invented the computer, right? And cracked the Enigma. Oh, wow, I could get into that. We could take a bunny trail right now, but I promised Jody that I would not digress, and I'll finish this presentation, Jody, this time. But I could talk about Turing forever. But he brought back this phrase, Kubernetes. You can see Google has also adopted it as well. And it is a term to control both animals and machines, right? So technology, terrifying technologies, the internet, right? People who control it. This is the origin of cyber. So, I'm going to stay on track, you see. This is going to keep me on track today. All right, I got my little cheat sheet. And so, we are going to take a look at how the ancient Greeks used their philosophy, used their mythology, so that they could give birth to what we are really the beneficiaries of in the new millennium. Right? Thank you, Greeks. Thank you, Socrates, right? Who had to drink poison because he was so enlightened and understood so much about philosophy, people didn't accept him. We stand upon the shoulders of giants, as Newton said, okay? And so the Greeks gave us many lessons. And the first one, when I think of Greek mythology, is that of a man. Not a woman, a man. And this man's name was Sisyphus. Sisyphus, according to Greek mythology, was the very first human. This is how they explained the story of where humans came from. Now, Sisyphus defied the gods. And he cheated death, not once, but twice. Now, because of this, and when he finally succumbed to that inevitable appointment that we will all face one day, Zeus was angry with him for defying him and defying the odds. And so he gave Sisyphus a very unusual and cruel punishment. Sisyphus had to roll a boulder up a hill for all eternity. And when the boulder got to the top of the hill, it would roll back down, and he had to roll it back up again and again, and so on and so forth forever. The life of Sisyphus is very much like the life of the CISO and those in the department of the CISO. Every single morning, you wake up, and what? Do you get reprieve? Have the threat actors suddenly gone on vacation? Absolutely not. You get to roll that boulder uphill for all of your career. We at Checkpoint have been rolling a boulder uphill for 30 years. Our great and mighty founder, Gil Shwed, a genius of a human being. I mean that. It likely has an IQ of 140, who gave birth to the entire network security industry that started with him. That one person, Sisyphus, rolling a boulder up a hill, solving very difficult and complicated problems. We now have a threat indicator database of about 100 million indicators of compromise. 100 billion indicators of compromise. We process 4 trillion access logs every day. Every single day. Now listen, these numbers are massive, so I'm going to give you some scale. How many Google searches do you think there are every day? Google. You use Google probably what? As an individual, 10, 20 times a day? And how many billions of people are there on Earth? Anyone want to take a guess? I really want some feedback. I'm speaking directly to you. Who had the cheat sheet? 6 billion Google searches a day, and we have 100 billion indicators of compromise. Threat actors are busy, and so are we. And so, from this database, we roll this boulder uphill every single day, and frankly, we're winning. We are winning. Turn off the news, people. Turn it off. We don't need it. We are winning the battle. The vast majority of companies are not breached. We are winning the battle. And I tell you what, for people like Gil Shwed, it's like easy. Really. I mean, these people, my boss, a fellow called Peter Alexander, he's the chief marketing officer. So I'll take a venture at his age, but certainly I would imagine he's in his late 50s. He's currently also doing a Master of Science degree in psychology through the London School of Economics so he can understand how to articulate the things that come out of Checkpoint's world-class engineering team so that we can deliver a comprehensive package of information to you. And I tell you what, he's chewing on this Master of Science in psychology like it's nothing, just eating it up. These are the people at this corporation. We flock around greatness, and he's one of them. So, I've got to stay on track, Jody. Do you know, eventually, Sisyphus found meaning and purpose in his punishment. And so do we. And I mean we. Us. You know, the person that adopts the heaviest load that they can possibly carry in life, like loading up the weight of responsibility so much so that their knees are almost buckling, these are the people that have true meaning and purpose. I'm not talking about happiness, that's fleeting, right? Happiness comes and goes, and we're lucky if we have some. Good. But purpose is built through rolling that boulder up a hill. And we find that we are the kinds of people who lean into these challenges. Do you know your profession chooses you? You don't choose your profession. This is an illusion, the illusion of control. Right? If I look at my own life, as a kid, I had an inherently insecure life. So I grew up loving straight lines and order, law, discipline. I was a police cadet. Then I was a Royal Marine reservist. Is it any wonder that I've fallen into cybersecurity? No, I was drawn to it, as are you. You can connect the dots looking back. Steve Jobs, from his commensurate address at Stanford quite a few years ago, said, you can connect the dots looking back. It's harder to connect them looking forward. But those are the Elon Musks and Steve Jobs and Gil Shweds of this world, right? Those are the geniuses. We write books about those people. For the rest of us mere mortals, if you look back on your life, you'll see why you are here today. And so, in the Greek story of creation, excuse me, I'm a little ahead. In the Greek story of creation, Zeus told Prometheus and his brother Epimetheus to assign gifts and traits to all of humanity. So to some animals, they gave fur to keep them warm. Other animals, they gave them wings to fly. Other animals, claws, horns, and body armor so that they could battle. But when they came to mankind, they had run out of gifts. And so feeling sorry for how pathetically weak we are, how we stand with our soft underbellies exposed, how we have no natural body armor but just this gigantic brain, they decided to give us fire, which Prometheus stole from Mount Olympus. Well, Zeus was furious about this and sought to punish man for accepting this gift, and he did by creating the first woman. That wasn't supposed to be a joke, but that's a classic, isn't it? And he sent her down to earth with a box, Pandora's box, which she must never open. And of course, Pandora opened the box. Now, out from inside the box came all sorts of plague, pestilence, and everything that is evil in this world. And the last of the curses that Zeus gave to humanity was hope. Hope. Now think about this for a moment. The Greeks were smart. We see hope as something that is wonderful. We hope for wonderful things. Is it not hope that ensures we do not put a premature end to our suffering? I wonder if Pandora's inbox were here today, what would be inside of it? It would be full of malicious links, attachments. It would be full of viruses and malware. Is it not hope that keeps us clicking? You know, maybe it's my birthday in 3 months. I see an email from DHL. I didn't order a package, but it's my birthday. Click. That's hope for you. This is why we will never, as cybersecurity professionals, we will never outgrow the problem of our beautiful colleagues and citizenry that will continue to click. It's part of our nature. We move forward. We are forward-seeking animals. Our eyes are on the front. This is how we've evolved. We have to progress. We have to walk forward. And clicking is part of that nature. It goes against our nature not to click. So while we have great cyber hygiene programs, and they are necessary, and people need to understand the threats and need to exercise discipline, we need tools and technology and process to help with the people. So in 2021, 81% of all breaches in 2021 came through email phishing campaigns. That's how it started. The inbox, and if we could just get away from email, it'd be so much better, but we can't. It's just so 2012 email is, but we've got this thing, we're saddled with it, and I think it's going to be here forever. But if 81% of breaches came through email, phishing campaigns, and spear phishing campaigns, and for some of the audience, I'll just define those a little bit right now. A spear phishing campaign is I'm targeting specifically you, right? I have a spear, and I'm getting you. An email phishing campaign is I'm throwing a net over the whole crowd, and I'll catch one or two of you. And so companies, or threat actors rather, will use these campaigns, and they will imitate brands, whether it's DHL or Google. And the #1 brand as of April of this year that is imitated by threat actors, it's not Microsoft anymore, right? It's not Google. Somebody say something? It's LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the #1 imitated brand now. Because threat actors realize that, hey, you're all on LinkedIn, you're where the money is, right? Remember the ransomware campaigns when they first started, it was to individuals for $400 or $500 locking up their personal computers. Are those still happening? Maybe, right? Some script kiddie's probably trying that. No, it's gone corporate now. So LinkedIn is the largest imitated platform for threat actors to imitate, to try and lure you to do something, to click some button. And so when these brands are imitated, for the most part, they are then directed to get your Office 365 credentials. That is actually the crown jewels for most of these threat actors. That's what they're looking to get. But phishing campaigns are not the only way that threat actors attempt to attack us. There are also Trojans. Probably the best example and connection to Greek mythology that cybersecurity has. And so in the ancient Greek story, the Trojans were defending their city against the Greeks. There was a massive war that went on for decades, and neither side was winning. The Trojan walls, the castle walls, the fire walls of that city were so strong they could not be penetrated. This is true in cybersecurity. I mean, no one's trying to brute force a checkpoint firewall. It's like, good luck. It will take you 100,000 years of personnel hours. I mean, good luck with that. So, the Greeks came up with an ingenious plan. They created a massive wooden horse, the horse being the symbol of Troy, right? Again, spoofing, right? Imitating a brand. And within it, they hid some of their best assassins. And then they pretended to leave the beaches and sail away. The Trojans, thinking that the Greeks had given up, opened up their city gates and received this gift, thinking it was an honorary award for winning the war, and brought it right inside their city gates. And at night, the Greek warriors slipped out, murdered the guards, opened up the gates. The Greek army came in and slaughtered all of Troy. Today, of course, we have many Trojans that attack our infrastructures, and I'm going to go through a case study of one of them right now that was dubbed Vicious Panda. Now, let me set this up for you. At Checkpoint, we have a team of what we call checkpoint research. So if you go to research.checkpoint.com, so it's research.checkpoint.com, you'll see this story that I'm about to tell you, and many, many others. This is a team of maybe 300 or 400 people. I like to call them offensive cyber operators. What they do is they go on the dark web every day. They assume a persona, an avatar of a terrorist or a criminal. All these people sit in Israel, by the way, at our head office. And they go out and they befriend really nasty human beings. They're in the dark web. And they do this so that we can have just a little edge, a little jump start. It's like, what are you nasty people doing? And they'll attempt to befriend them. And then they'll attempt to trick them to say, hey, let's be part of this campaign. Because threat actors today, these are cybercrime syndicates. There's a great one, actually. If you go to research.checkpoint.com and search for something like cyber kingpin, there's a great write-up by a fellow called Oded Van Unu. And Oded is one of our brilliant guys. And he spent, I think, 6-8 months researching how these cybercrime syndicates work. And so at the top, you get a kingpin. Think old school mafia boss. So at the top, you've got this kingpin. Now, they might have a certain skill set. I don't know what it would be. But let's say that they want to launch a ransomware campaign against an enterprise and charge them $5, $6, $10 million, as we've all seen in the news all the time. Well, they need people with phishing skill sets. Maybe that kingpin doesn't have it. So they actually outsource that. They need somebody who has skill sets for Office 365. They outsource that. And there's this intricate network, and it's incredibly profitable for them. We see most of this out of Eastern Europe, a lot of state and government attacks out of North Korea, China, Russia, obviously. But Eastern Europe, for some reason, has most of the threat actors that tend to outsource around the world skill sets to attack mostly companies in the West, because we've got the money. Right? I mean, there aren't other targets to attack. We have the proprietary information and the coin. And so our threat researchers will go onto the dark web every day and they'll discover things. Here's one. This was great. This is a fun one. It's a few years old now, but you probably haven't heard of it because it's just so obscure. So one day they discovered a bunch of maps on the dark web for sale, right? The threat actors weren't showing what the maps were. They just said, hey, we've got maps, not geographical topology maps, maps of buildings like this one, dimensions of rooms, corporate offices, certain houses, right? Like the dimensions of rooms in houses and the address of the house and who lives there. So, well, why is that for sale? What are they doing with this? So, actually, we got busted. The threat actors on this one knew it was either, like an intelligence agency or somebody like Checkpoint, right, trying to do some research. So we got blocked. Doesn't matter. We went and did our research. And what we found out was, the robot vacuum cleaner, right? LG, in this particular case, it was the LG Roomba robot vacuum cleaner. What that thing does, it actually maps out your room because it needs to be more efficient for the battery power. I've got one at home, not the LG one. Right? I've got one at home, and what it does is it goes around vacuuming up all the crumbs, and then it plugs itself back in, right, and charges itself. In order to be efficient for the battery to do that, it maps out the room. Now, where does the map go? It was being uploaded to LG's cloud. LG isn't a security company. That had been breached. So we discovered this, and then what our researchers do is they very quickly phone up LG, and we do this all the time. We've helped out Facebook. We've helped out all these companies voluntarily. Right? We do this as just an act of goodwill at our company. And we work with those vendors to say, hey, you've got to secure this. And then we secured this for them. So that's a fun one. But here's one that we called Vicious Panda. So Vicious Panda was there it is. Vicious Panda was an attack on the Mongolian public sector. There we are. With a remote access Trojan. Okay, listen to this. The attack started with a lure document, okay, that was written in Mongolian, allegedly coming from the Mongolian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It was giving information about COVID-19 prevalence. The document was dated back to January 2020, which is when all pieces of information were really critical. Remember back then, we just didn't know if this was going to kill half the planet. We just didn't know what was going on. So we were trying to absorb every piece of information. Now, while it looked like a plain text document, it was actually weaponized to include a warrior exploit for the equation editor rich text format vulnerability. The infection basically works like this. The RTF document exploits the machine. That's all that does. Then a malicious DLL, which is dynamic link library, is dropped into the Word startup folder, meaning that it would execute anytime Word is opened. Then it downloads and executes the next stage DLL from the attacker's file server, which then downloads and executes a third and last DLL, which is the actual malware payload. Very sophisticated, like really smart stuff. The malware is straightforward, mostly stealing information like files and screenshots and these kinds of things. And then pivoting on the IOCs of this attack, the indicators of compromise, remember 100 billion indicators of compromise in our database, we found more targets in Russia and the Ukraine. And we also found that the campaigners ran a similar attack against the Mongolian government in 2016, but this time, instead of the coronavirus, they were using the Zika virus as a lure document. Now, let's pause and just think about this for a moment. The pandemic, Zika virus. Threat actors are smart. They use this kind of stuff because it is essential information. In January 2020, everybody was under duress, under stress. Now, here's what happens biologically when you're under stress. Blood moves from your head, this massive cerebral cortex that we have, to your extremities. Gets you ready for fight or flight, right? Or freeze. It also means you can't think logically. So when there's a document that comes along saying, hey, we've got access to the vaccine, click. You're not thinking properly. This is what we're battling against as cybersecurity professionals, right? This is the people with the process and the technology. And so Trojans are another way that threat actors can penetrate organizations, but we also have vulnerabilities or an Achilles heel. I love Greek mythology, it just works. And so Achilles was one of the greatest warriors in all of the Greek kingdoms. When Achilles was born, his mother, Theseus, that's right, his mother Theseus was given a prophecy. And the prophecy was that he would grow to become the greatest warrior in all of Greece, but he would die young in battle. Afraid for her newborn child, for the love of her life, Theseus grabbed Achilles, took him to the river Styx, and dipped him, holding him upside down by his ankles, into the magical river so that he would be fortified as a human being, leaving only his ankles as the vulnerable point on his body. Well, of course, Achilles did grow up to become the greatest warrior in all of their kingdoms, slaying dragons, beating everybody. And when he killed Hector, the brother of the prince of brother of Paris, the prince of Troy, Paris sought revenge, and one of the gods snitched, revealing Achilles' weakness to Paris. There's always an insider threat. We'll get to that in a few moments. And this one from the gods, people we trust, or we should trust. Those are the ones that hurt. And so Paris shot an arrow through Achilles' heel, taking him down and killing him. So the motto today is not trust but verify. It's never trust and always verify. But verify quickly. Okay, this brings me on to a good point, and it's the philosophy of Checkpoint. Prevention versus detection. I'm about to tell you what distinguishes this beautiful company and these incredible colleagues I have and the people that I work with, and why we are different from everybody else in the industry. So you got to understand, there are geniuses at work. I'm not one of them. I'm a mere mortal, okay? But there are geniuses at work. Now, when Gil Schwed first started this company, he foresaw something that almost 30 years later now, the industry is coming around to with terms like cybersecurity mesh architecture. You've seen that in Gartner, I suppose, right? It's very new, CSMA, cybersecurity mesh architecture. We've been calling it Infinity for years, right? That's the name of our what we call Infinity architecture, okay? Prevention and detection. If you want to simply detect the known threats out there, we have 100 billion known threats, okay? If you want to protect against that, just pick any vendor in the top right-hand quadrant of Gartner. This is, I don't want to say it's easy, I couldn't do it, but this is done now. We know how to do this. We know how to prevent and stop and block known threats. It's the unknown threats, the 0 days. If you go to my LinkedIn, I did a live stream just this morning with a fellow called Dan Wiley and another guy called Eyal Manor. Two great human beings at our organization. And you can watch it in the archives, okay? So just go Eddie Doyle, LinkedIn, boom, you'll see it there. And they were talking about this very thing right there and then, where we discovered yesterday a 0-day vulnerability, 0 day. So this is the unknown threats. Now, how do you stop that? If it's not known, if it's not in your database, how are you going to stop something that's brand new? Well, the vast majority of people can't. That is rocket science. That is tremendously difficult, okay? And really, this is what I say. You get to pick your poison. This is for all of life, by the way. Pick your poison. Right? We all have an inevitable appointment that Sisyphus tried to resist. Throughout life, we gravitate easily to annihilation. This is the human condition. Just lay down and do nothing, you'll die. Right? Life requires effort. So pick your poison. Either detect the known threats and let in any traffic that is unknown, and then if it's malicious, deal with the threat actors once they are inside your environment. Well, that's a hell of a poison pill, right? Or prevent the unknown threats as well, keeping the threat actors out, but risking a false positive event when, not if, when we get it wrong. Notice how I said that. Listen, You're cybersecurity professionals, so you get it, but this is what we've got to do. We've got to train our C-suite, our CEOs, our CFOs, and the rest of the organization to understand that there will be very few false positives, but we will have them. And when we have them, we will never experience the same one twice, and we will manage the false positive with the least amount of impact. That's poison, but it's better poison than allowing threat actors in the organization and trying to stop them once they're in. So, you know how, actually, I'm 50 years old, so maybe a few of you don't know how. So when I first started in the industry, Microsoft Word was a new thing, and IT departments used to support us using Microsoft Word. I didn't know how to use it, right? I'm talking about when I was 21 years old. Like, oh, okay, this is a thing, this works, does it? Okay. And so IT departments came to help us. IT department's not coming today. It's a given that every employee, when they walk through the door, understands how to use Microsoft's suite of products and a plethora of other technologies. That is a given. We're not going to train you for that. You need to come to the party already knowing it. But in the same way that we used to support people using these very simple tools, it is on us, the cybersecurity professionals, to educate, train, and support and love and caress our colleagues so that they can handle false positive events. And by third-party industry analysts, we have, I think our false positive rate is less than 1%. Right, I'll get you some nods from the engineers. Less than 1% of what we block, of the unknown threats, less than 1% are false positives. So the interruption is minuscule, but when it happens, we need to be big kids about it, right? We need to say to the CEO and CFO, let's just be grown-ups. These things will happen. Better that than to let threat actors in. So that's prevention versus detection, and that is the DNA of this company, and we will die on that mountain. It's been like that since the very beginning. So Checkpoint Research, I mentioned to you earlier, they try to find the Achilles heel in many different organizations. And when we do it, as I said, we work with those organizations so that we can shore up their defenses. And I'm going to tell you another story. So last year, CPR, we call them, Checkpoint Research, found the first ever remote access, a remote code execution vulnerability in a public cloud, in Azure, as you see up here. It received the highest possible severity score of 10. Right, so a very big deal. This could be catastrophic if it's out in the wild with people. Our researchers found a way to run an Azure function that would get access to all other functions running on the same machine. So in other words, we were able to break the virtual walls between different cloud users and get access to read and write and modify other users' activities. So we worked with them to find these vulnerabilities before the threat actors do. This is the race that we're into. And we help them secure these services so that the supply chain attacks, we all know about colonial pipelines, right? Supply chain attacks are a very big deal today, is not affected. Now, still in Microsoft, we revealed and named a vulnerability called SIGRED, another 10 out of 10 remote code execution vulnerability, this time in the WinDNS server. Now, this vulnerability affects practically every Windows network environment, and it's wormable, meaning that one machine can initiate an infection laterally and move through the entire network to other machines. So going back to Achilles, we found a set of over 400 vulnerabilities in a mobile device that we named Achilles, by the way. Again, go to research.checkpoint.com to get great write-ups on this. The vulnerabilities we found were in a processing chip, so in hardware this time. The processing chip from a third-party manufacturer called Qualcomm, huge company, Qualcomm, and affects over 40% of the total smartphone global market. Right, Google and Samsung, for example, use these in their phones. What else? Exploitation of this vulnerability is also seamless, right? It does not require the user to interact with the phone at all, right? We can turn the phone into a spying tool, a listening tool, a recording tool, providing location and time, date stamps and pictures and personal information. So think about boardroom conversations. Right, boardroom conversations of CEOs and CFOs releasing new products, talking about their financials before it's disclosed to the public stock exchange. All of this stuff can be spied on through this one vulnerability. Or the threat actor could simply write a command to destroy all the phones. Fancy destroying all the phones in one corporation. You take like Bank of America, for example, 60,000 employees. Boom. Right? 40% of the phones, roughly speaking, if it's Samsung. What would happen? Could you even get to work? I know my wife's telephone number, that's it. I don't know my kids' numbers, my kids' school numbers, all of it's in my phone. So turn that into a brick, I wouldn't even be able to drive home today, right? Wouldn't be able to get to the airport. So this was a huge vulnerability. Okay, so CPR also does hunting for threat actors as well. So machines, codes, and people. So this brings us on to the story of Narcissus. Now, Narcissus, in Greek mythology, was a beautiful, handsome, dynamic man. And he was walking through the woods one day when a nymph named Echo saw him and fell instantly in love with him. And she called out from the woods. And Narcissus, being a mean man, even though he was a beautiful, good-looking man, responded back and rebuked her and harshly rejected her admiration of him. Feeling crushed, Echo simply went back to the woods for all eternity, echoing other people's voices. Well, Nemesis, the goddess of revenge, heard about this. And so she cursed Narcissus. She made him look into a pool of water after he had been out hunting one day and to take a drink. And she made him fall in love with his own reflection in the water. Well, we found a threat actor fairly recently, and I'm going to tell you this story too. This was a very interesting one. We were asked to assist with a defacement campaign on the government websites of Trinidad and Tobago. We learned that the threat actor, allegedly a hacktivist going by the name Vanda the God, not part of the Greek gods, was proficient in defacing websites, including some related to the Brazilian Amazon and other government and university websites. So, when analyzing the avatar of this person, CPR learned several things. According to his domains whois data, he's from Uberlandia, Brazil. Now, could be fake, of course. His email address was also used in registering another domain, the BrazilianCyberArmy.com. Okay? We found his Twitter and Facebook profiles under fake names. In one of his social media posts, we see a user on the toolbar called MR. We have his real name, of course, but we'll call him MR for now. So we gave it a shot, and we searched Facebook for MR in Uberlandia, and we found several, but only one of them posting an image of the Brazilian Cyber Army. So we were wondering, is this MR person Vanda the God? Well, we saw some cross-posting between the accounts, could of course just be cross-posting between different users, until we found two images which were obviously different from each other in that image that you just saw there, but on a closer look, we saw from that image that people playing PlayStation had exactly the same TV stand. So upon further investigation, we confirmed that MR was this Vanda the God. And so we contacted the Brazilian police. He was arrested, and it looks like Nemesis, the goddess of revenge, was using his images in these pictures to catch him. How are we doing for time here, friends? Okay, 10 minutes. All right, let's wrap this up. We need some how-tos. We need to have practical what to do next steps. We have a really good cyber hub, and of course you have the great Secure Academy here from the local checkpoint representation, as well as the people that they are working with. And so at our cyber hub, if you go to checkpoint.com, you can find our cyber hub. There is so much free information there. You can get hold of us there too. I mean, the local team here is so heavily plugged into the community, I'm sure you already know who they are. And from this, we invite you. And this is what I like to say. We don't want to be your vendor at Checkpoint. We want to be your partner. And it is on you, the customer, to make us your partner. I like to ask this question. It's a little tongue-in-cheek, but I am serious about it. Why haven't you come out to Tel Aviv? Well, first thing, I haven't got any money. Well, if your refrigerator breaks at home, You need food. You'll replace it like that, and that'll cost you $5,000. You will, you'll do it. You'll find the $5,000 and you'll buy yourself a new refrigerator. So why aren't you coming out to Tel Aviv? We have this incredible innovation center out there. We invite you out there. Come see us. Talk to your local Checkpoint team. We can arrange it. You have to get out there. That's on you. You have to come out. But when you're out there, you're going to find some of the most hospitable, beautiful, intelligent, hardworking people that you've ever found in your life. And imagine, this is the secret to our success at Checkpoint. And again, it is all about that life of Sisyphus rolling a boulder uphill. It is about standing up under a heavy burden. Our friends in Tel Aviv are under the threat of absolute annihilation all the time. And yet they have stood up under the weight of this responsibility in the only part of the Middle East that has no oil, and they've decided to use their intellect to move forward, and in a mere, 70, 80 years, since 1948 after World War II, when they were almost decimated as a people group, they have become global leaders in technology, cybersecurity, and pharmaceuticals. Global leaders. And they do all this, and it's one hell of a party. It's a great time in Tel Aviv. It's so much fun. Some of the world's best food is there. You just wouldn't think it. I've had some of the best sushi in my life in Tel Aviv. Like hummus too, but sushi, really. And so come out to our office and sit down with our people and strategize with us and become our partner. We have a dirt cheap or free, I can't quite remember, a little tool for consumers. It's called Zone Alarm. So you can get it. You just go to Zone Alarm or just Google Zone Alarm. I'm not sure what the website is. Certainly you can find it through Checkpoint. And we don't talk about it too much because it's for individuals. I mean, we take care of enterprise companies. But we've got this amazing technology built for enterprise companies, from a multi-billion-dollar organization like Checkpoint. And we've whittled all of that technology down into a little piece of software that will sit on your personal desktop, or into a small gateway that you can have at your house or your personal office. Now, why not take the very best, whittled down into a couple of $100 box, rather than try to create something from the ground? Right? It's something that isn't designed to defend against the very worst of threats. The reason I bring that up is because it gives us, I think, about 100 million nodes around the world that we're listening to. So that's one of the strategic reasons why we give that product away to consumers. I'm not sure if it's given away, it's like $50 a year or something. That's one of the reasons, because now we're listening everywhere. So we have research groups that are on the dark web anticipating what might happen. Also, finding vulnerabilities in major manufacturers like LG and Facebook and Microsoft, working with them to patch it up before the threat actors can find the vulnerability. I mean, I love it. It's a cat and mouse game. And as I said at the beginning, we are winning. We're winning this fight. And I don't want to make it seem easy, but to some of the people that work here, it's like, yeah, come on. What else have you got? What else can you challenge us with? And this is why we want you at our head office, so that you can tell us what your challenges are. I'm telling you right now, Gil Schwed will spit that out for breakfast, our challenges that we have. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I will wrap up. And I will wrap up by telling you what happened to Prometheus after he gave man fire. Zeus was really cheesed off, obviously. And so he punished Prometheus by tying him into a rock, and he had an eagle eat out his liver every single day. And at nighttime, his liver would grow back, and the eagle would return the next morning. That was his punishment. Why? Why such a horrific punishment for fire? Why make Sisyphus roll a boulder uphill for all eternity? Fire changed everything. That's why. Fire gave us warmth. Fire cooks our food, which is simply the pre-digestion of food. We don't have to, like baboons and other primates, spend all day chewing leaves and digesting them. We pre-digest our food by cooking it so we can be digested and back into a room like this in 45 minutes. That's what fire did for us. Fire gave us nuclear, right? Gave us gunpowder, gave us bombs. Fire gave us electricity. It gives us the internet. In 1440, Johann Gutenberg invented the printing press. Now, this was the first time in human history that the mass distribution of knowledge was available to people. Prior to that point in history, it was only the religious elite and the monarchs, the dictators, that had the information, that had power. For millennia, as barbarians, we survived to come to this place that we are today in life. The printing press is invented, and a mere 200 years later, it gave birth to the Great Renaissance, where Isaac Newton says, "If I have seen further than others, it is because I've stood upon the shoulders of giants." The person that discovered the law of gravity. This is incredible. And the internet is the printing press on steroids. Today, some kid in India is going to get the internet. 200,000 people a week are being hooked up to the electrical grid in India. 200,000 people a week are being connected to the electrical grid in India. The next Einstein is living somewhere in a hut. And when they get access to the internet, we will be the beneficiaries of their brains. And our job, ladies and gentlemen, is to protect that internet, that person, that next Einstein, so that they can do their work. And here's an interesting side note. We just have to get through this little bit of cultural turmoil that we're having right now, okay? The culture wars I'm talking about, the stupidity that we see on the major cable news networks. Turn it off. Like, really, bankrupt these companies. They are of zero benefit to us, the big cable news networks. Really. It's just gossip and lies. They are in the same position that we were as a society from 1440 to 1660, when Newton said, "If I have stood on the shoulders of giants." Now, there's a 200-year gap. Why didn't the Renaissance hit immediately? What happened in those 200 years? What books did we have? Certainly we had great books like Thomas Paine's pamphlet, Common Sense. Without that, there'd be no America, ladies and gentlemen. That's the gratitude we need to have for the printing press. But what happened in those 200 years prior to all this greatness? Do you know the most popular book right after the printing press was invented was How to Spot a Witch? Yeah, think about it. We're a bunch of barbarians. It was called the Dark Ages for a reason. It's a horrible time. And the way you spotted a witch was simply by accusing your neighbor of being a witch. That's how you spotted a witch. And the accusation meant you were guilty. And the way you proved your innocence was by not drowning when bound and thrown into a river, or not burning at the stake, ladies. The printing press gave us the Salem witch trials. Think about it today. The internet gets invented. I was a school teacher back when it was invented, right? I remember them rolling in these computers into my classroom. I was like, this is not a computer lab. They're, no, everybody's going to get one of these now. There's this thing called the internet. And I'm like, really? This is cool. Oh, wow. You mean this connects to every university? Because back there's universities back in the very early days. This connects to every... We're going to get world peace in like 10 years. That's what I thought. I really did think it'd be world peace. What did we get? Kitten videos and pictures of people's food. And then we got Twitter, the internet's urinal. And then we get accusations. And the big one today, of course, is racist. That's it, career's over. Bigot, career's over. So we're just in the same place we were from 1440 to 1600s. We've just got to get through this blip so that we can realize that everybody in this room, look at me, you're beautiful. You're amazing human beings. I meant what I said at the very beginning. Thank you. Thank you for being here. The work you are doing means something. It really does. Don't underestimate, no matter even if you're a student, what you are doing is meaningful. And without you, this world would not operate. So we just need to push through this little cultural stage to realize that we are giving birth. We are the generation that is giving birth to the next great renaissance, so that we can usher in incredible things for society, and we, the cybersecurity people, are going to keep that information highway safe for people to travel. Okay, now I'm done. Thank you so much. No, it's me that thanks you. Thank you so much. All right, have an amazing time.